Action. Welcome, Michael, to also the Hidden Mind podcast. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks, Edward. Thanks for having me on, mate.
It's a real also pleasure to have you on. Been watching you as a coach for many years now. You're obviously taking a break. Can you talk to me about the last few months and how it's been since obviously leaving Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, obviously, I came to Saudi in November and was with the club up until the end of the January transfer window, which is when Steven Gerrard resigned from the club. In fact, I'm no longer assistant coach, but I'm an executive consultant to the board, so I'm still around. I'm still mixing my time up between the UK and obviously Saudi Arabia. I've just come back, as you know, from Kobar over the weekend, so it was a fantastic experience. There's a lot of things about the league where it's growing and the buzz around it, which was so exciting to work in, mate.
And can you talk to me a bit about your kind of time at also Etifak? You joined there, I think October, like around then, and you were there for a few months. Obviously, not like a long time, but can you talk to me about your experiences there?
Yeah, I went actually around the 20th of November, so a little bit later. I was there up until the Christmas break and then back after in January. So in total, I was there for 9 games. Won four, drew one, lost three. I think that adds up to nine, maybe. No, I'll answer that again, Edward. Can we start again? Because I completely fucked that up.
A bit about your time in Saudi Arabia at also Etifak. The things that you experienced with also the league, with the club, it's obviously a very different culture out there. Can you talk to me a bit about your obviously time there? You weren't there for long, but your time there and your experiences there.
Yeah, I went in late November, so I was there about 3 or 4 weeks before the Christmas break, and then obviously back for the whole of January. So I was hugely surprised about a lot of things with the league. Firstly, the facilities that we had at Etihad, which was a big thing that Steven Gerrard and Jordan Milsom and the other staff there helped the club with, was to build the infrastructure around the training ground. And the training ground is very much a Premier League training ground in that the level of the pitches that we have, the facilities and staffing that we had inside the club. We had the old club chef from Rangers as well, so the food was such a high level like it was at Rangers. And in terms of the league, obviously you have the games where you're playing the main teams like Etihad, who had Benzema up front, Bergwijn, Diaby on the wing, Hossam Aouar, Fabinho, Kante, and then you'll play against Firmino and Ivan Toney, Mahrez, Ronaldo, John Duran, Mane with a front three for Nasser. So those teams are of Champions League level in terms of if you look at the players and the names that are in those sides. And then there's the other parts of the league that people don't see where there's lots of travel to quite remote places, remote cities in Saudi Arabia. But I took all of it as a huge learning experience and a growth experience. I learned so much about the country. As I say, I still have a house in Kobar now. I'm still splitting my time between there and the family here in UK when I can get back. So no, I've been pleasantly surprised by everything in terms of the culture and obviously the football experience.
Can you talk to me because you're kind of also coaching career. You've worked in also Brazil, you worked in also UK, and now you worked in Saudi Arabia. It's a really unique kind of pathway. There's not also many coaches, also British coaches that have worked in three also continents like that. Can you talk to me a bit about the aspect with also recruitment out there? Obviously, we see a lot. We've seen, the last few years, a lot of stars going out there, and it's kind of changed for a team like with also Etifak. They're not obviously PIF obviously funded. How would you and also Etifak kind of change their recruitment strategy? Obviously compared to the big obviously clubs out there.
Yeah, I think I had to research this before I went as well. So each team can have 8 foreign or overseas players in their squad, plus two foreign overseas players in that are under the age of 21. But only eight can be in the matchday squad. So I think what we saw when the league first started up with this new investment is we saw an influx of foreign players and money being spent. But obviously, there's going to always be a cap on that, Edward, because you can only have 8 foreign players and two under 21 in your squad. So once those slots are maxed out, there's no place for the players, for new players to come in, unless players want to leave. Now, with the way the league is, with the excitement around the league, with also the ease of life living in the main cities in Saudi Arabia, and obviously the salaries, not a lot of those players will want to move on. They're there to make an impact. So that's why we've seen the spending fluctuate, obviously from so much, first of all, to less. Then I think then you have to look at culture, which players could settle into the culture there, um, which players can play in that heat. I think that's important. And also the motivation for the players coming. They're all things that they're big factors that you have to put in. And also, the standard things that are anywhere. How does this player fit our organisation and our team? It's an exciting league because all of the big players, when it comes to them maybe running out of contract or it comes to the summer, there's an option or there's speculation that big players are going to come in the league. And it's no matter where you work in the world, mate, you want to work against the best and play against the best. And, to see Benzema up live and close and play against him and Kante, Fabinho, Ronaldo, like I said, Mane, that's a real pleasure to prepare your team to play against those players.
What are they like as live when you're seeing them live when you're trying to coach obviously against them live?
Well, it's different to the Premier League. Obviously, I was an assistant manager there at Aston Villa, and the Premier League, every team's got players that can hurt you because of the physicality and the pace in every team, the speed of the game. It's different there because the speed of the game's different. It's much more closer to Brazil. So the game's played on moments, and teams are building the game in terms of their build-up play much more slowly and carefully, if you like, to get the ball to the final third. But when you look at, as I say, if you look at NASA with John Duran, Mane, and Ronaldo up front. That's some front three that you're facing there, and likewise with Firmino, Ivan, Tony, Mahrez in their team as well, high quality. We had very good players in our own squad as well. The most famous being obviously Gini Wijnaldum, and it was fantastic for me to work with him. He's a player that I've admired from far back when I was Liverpool under-23s coach and he arrived at Liverpool, and then obviously looking at him from the outside. And he certainly did disappoint both as a person and a professional. It was fantastic to work with him. And that's what you want to do if you're fortunate enough in any industry to work in what you would call a hobby or a passion, like I do with football, then to get to see these players. And for me, a personal moment was obviously Benzema, because he's a player that I love watching, and so clever in his movement, excellent in his decision making as well. It's not so much when his movement to get on the ball, it's when he's got it, he always makes the correct decision. And that was great to see.
I think it's amazing that you've experienced that league because obviously me being in also Dubai, seeing that league grow, seeing obviously the UAE, obviously Pro League go, the kind of exposure out here is huge, but obviously people don't get to see that obviously also aspect of it, obviously back home. I just wanted to ask you about your experiences with also Brazil. You worked in there at also Sao Paulo. Is that yeah? Can you talk to me a bit about the culture, the football, the kind of lifestyle, and what you've learned from that kind of experience there?
It's a real harsh environment for coaches. I think the average tenure of coaches is 15 games. So it's a real harsh place for coaches to work, but it's beautiful. Like, I grew up like most young kids, I think, with Brazil being your second favorite team at the World Cup. Every time the World Cup comes round, I don't know what the World Cup would ever be without Brazil. It's something about those yellow shirts and everything that we grew up with. So it was fascinating to go over there. When I went, I was living my best moment in probably my career at the time, being Liverpool under-23s coach and really enjoying that. But the opportunity to go to Brazil, a huge club like Sao Paulo. Also, I was going to assist an icon in Rogério Ceni, who had played there for over 20 years. And he's the goalkeeper that scored 158 goals, came up to the free kicks and penalties. So I was going to work with an icon. And so it was fantastic just to see the passion they have for football. I went to their academy, which was called Cotia at the time. Eder Militao, who's the Real Madrid centre back, was a young boy we took from the 19s to the first team and gave him his debut. So it's great to see how his career's gone. But coming from the experience I had at Chelsea and Liverpool in the academy, it was such a pleasure to go and work in Brazil, not just with Brazilians, but with South American players in general. There was a lot of different nationalities. And again, it's a country that lives for football. It's all about winning and scoring goals and creating. If you take off an attacking player, maybe you're winning 2-0 and you're trying to kill the last 10 minutes of the game, it's still frowned upon because you're taking off, one of your attacking players. And that's the beauty of the sport. And the two things, Brazil and football, go hand in hand, in terms of like the place absolutely stinks of football. And I'll give you like I played away at Santos. It's still my favorite day ever in football because it's Pele's old stadium, and we won there. And it was the same day that my family arrived, so that was equally special because I hadn't been with my family for a couple of months. But everything about that experience, I feel so privileged for having.
What are the also differences and also the similarities that you found working in Saudi and also the UK and also Brazil from more of a like a coaching perspective in the way that you coach, obviously the language barriers there and also the cultural barriers and how that impacts you as a coach?
Well, in terms of the layout of the session, it's very similar in terms of the amount of time that you train. I think sometimes in the UK we have to train obviously with a greater intensity at times because of the weather. And in Saudi Arabia and in Brazil, we certainly didn't have those issues. So the session can be, it can go up and down in terms of intensity. Sometimes in the winter in the UK, you go outside and it's about moving around because of the weather. I think tactically, it gives you more time. But in general, like the layout of the session, whether you're working 60 minutes or 90 minutes, depending where you are in the week, that's the same. I think diet and food are different in each place. Culture is very different in each place as well. Both Brazil and Saudi Arabia are very religious countries, and certainly in Saudi Arabia, where you pray 5 times a day. So you have to plan the training around that. We obviously have the period of Ramadan that the team's just gone through as well, which has an impact in terms of when you can train and how much the intensity. What I found with both Saudi Arabia and Brazil is there's a lot of traveling involved in the games and sometimes to quite remote places. There's obviously the language barrier. Now, football is an international language, if you like, but there's certainly Portuguese is a difficult language to learn, but that was much easier than me learning any Arabic, which would be so difficult for me. But what I've found in all the places that I've worked is that you're very lucky when you work in a football club because everyone is fulfilling their dream or something they wanted to do when they was young. A lot of the players you're working with are young men under the age of 30 and they're fit and healthy and there's no substance abuse. These players are obviously, they're aspirational young people. They got goals and aims. So in all the clubs you go into, it's a hugely positive environment. And therefore, you feel so privileged to work there. The levels are obviously different. It's very hard to say what's the level like in Brazil compared to the UK or Saudi compared to the UK. I prefer to mention the names of players that were in the teams. And as I just mentioned with Saudi Arabia, there's some players playing in there that would absolutely light up the Premier League. Does that mean that a Saudi Arabian team would be able to play in that style in the Premier League? Probably not. But we all know that if Benzema was playing in the Premier League, he'd be one of the best players. And so that's the easiest way to look at it, I think.
Yeah, I think I now want to go to your obviously time at also Rangers is obviously firstly like an assistant coach, obviously working under Steven Gerrard, and you had a lot of um success there. You won the league, you did well in also the Europa League. Can you talk to me a bit about that kind of job and how it came about and your experience working there?
Well, I'd come back from Brazil and was helping out mentor some of the younger coaches at Liverpool Academy as a head of coaching.
Mm,
And at the end of the season, I got a call to say would I go and meet Steven Gerrard to have a chat about him going to Rangers. It was a surprise. It was out of the blue.
mm,
Uh, I'd been around and obviously seen Steven, but it wasn't like we were close or anything. So it was a surprise, a nice surprise to be asked. And I know the size of the club and I had a lot of faith in Steven's vision, but also what he wanted from me. Steven's a guy that wants to stand back as a manager and oversee everything. And he's very, very good at that in terms of his leadership role. Where he wanted me was to be on the pitch every day, putting our ideas into play. So it wasn't just us two. There was Gary McAllister, there was Tom Coleshaw, Jordan Milson, sorry, Scott Mason, all these guys in our management team. It was very much a team effort. I think Stephen put together a management team that really complemented himself at that stage. And we went to Rangers, and the fans were excited because they was on the journey back. You know, they'd been demoted down to the second division and worked their way back up. And there was very much a chance at the time to build something special. And it took a couple of years. In the first couple of seasons, we had lots of hope and lots of good performances, especially in Europe, but domestically also, but fell short. And then we had the fantastic year where we won the league invincible, unbeaten. Um, and it was a wonderful experience. My time working with Stephen, obviously in three places now, Rangers, Aston Villa, and Etihad, has always been fantastic. He's a fantastic person to work for. And on a personal level, he's always been very, very good to me. So I have a lot to be thankful for in terms of both our friendship and our working relationship.
Do you think your also time there, your also first stint there is also by the wider perspective fairly judged in terms of the amazing achievements you achieved the first league title in obviously many years there. Do you think people don't really recognize, the success that you and Stephen and also the team had there?
Maybe I always think it comes back to the memories and feelings that you give people. And I think if you ask any Rangers fan in that period going to Porto and playing so well and then beating them at home and final, some of those big results in Europe and then winning that league meant a great deal to them and winning it invincible was even more. So I know what it gave to a generation of Rangers fans. And you have to remember it's a club that has over 50,000 in the stadium every week, but so many fans around the world. So, listen, everybody's going to have their opinions. Sometimes, if they support a different team, it makes sense for them to dampen an achievement. But I know that it meant a lot to the Rangers fans that I still bump into from time to time around the world now, still speak about it. So, I think that the job that Stephen did with the support of the whole management team was an excellent one.
Can I ask you, we're going to move on to also QPR. You had your obviously first head obviously coach role there. Can you talk to me a bit about your time there, the experiences you had? You had a really good start there, and then obviously moving to Rangers, but just in particular QPR, the club, your overall feelings associated with also the club.
Yeah, obviously we went from Rangers to Aston Villa, who were down the bottom of the league at the time, and then in the 29 games we'd have been there, we'd have been ninth in the Premier League. So
Yeah.
we went into that summer in real optimism in terms of what could happen. That summer was quite a busy one for myself. Soon as the season ended with that, if you remember that fantastic game at Man City where we were actually winning 2-0 and then Man City come back and won the league. So that was a crazy game
Mm.
to be involved in. In the days after that, I had two or three different offers to become a manager. I'd had some offers before, but now we was at a stage where um, I felt I was at a point in my career where it was the right step for me to make to become a manager. And I felt that at QPR was a perfect opportunity for that for a number of reasons, having met the owners and spoke to them about their passion, but also that the club had some financial issues. So it needed me to work with the young group that they had and maybe just bring in loans or free transfers. And I was very comfortable because I believed already in three or four of the players that were there in the squad. So I was excited to go and work with them. And yeah, it was a fantastic period. Obviously, my first management job, you can imagine I went into it with lots and lots of energy. It was the first time building my own coaching staff. I had fantastic support from Les Ferdinand, the sporting director, which was really, really important. And also the head of youth, Chris Ramsey, who's a renowned head of youth, was in the building as well. So I had a really good number of people around me. And the players, when we came out of pre-season, they just took to the ideas. And we had some fantastic results. We were very, very good away from home in that period. Millwall, Bristol City, Sheffield United, Watford. We went to all these places and won. And we gave the QPR fans some fantastic days out. We managed to get to the top of the championship, which my remit was maybe just to keep the team in the league and show that we could progress over time. So we were way ahead of schedule, and it's sad that obviously it ended when it did, but there was a lot of things. Obviously, there was an approach from another team, obviously in the Premier League that's everyone's aware of, and then obviously Rangers came back in the World Cup break, and with my family. being here and everything, my relationship with Rangers from the year before, it was a tough decision I had to make. But I look back on the time at QPR with only fondness. It was the time I've enjoyed the most as a manager, outside maybe the first 3 months at Rangers, which were also very good. Um, and yeah, look, I've still got a lot of friends there on the playing staff, the backroom staff. Occasionally, I keep in touch with the ownership as well, and drop them a good luck message. And I just wish that club every success in the future. Certainly on my side, there's only really warm feelings and good memories.
Was it the hardest decision that you've made to leave there, or to the point that you did in terms of
Yes,
a footballing sense?
at different times in your life, there's big decisions. I left Chelsea to go to Liverpool in 2012, and my son was 6 months old. We didn't know anyone in Liverpool, and then obviously leaving Liverpool to go to Sao Paulo was tough. All these decisions when you leave somewhere that you've enjoyed are really tough. Leaving Aston Villa, a club that I was really enjoying working at, which had some fantastic players, especially young players, and leaving Stevens' management team, deciding, to turn down a job opportunity just 5 or 6 weeks before was really difficult because I knew how that was going to play out. But sometimes you have to make a decision with your heart, and at that time, that's what I did. And you can always look back. All I would say is in that period that I was at QPR, the players and the fans and everyone was fantastic to me. So I've only got warm memories, but all these decisions are tough, Edward. Trust me, and you can only make the right decision you feel in that moment. You take advice, obviously, from people around you, but it's very much a personal decision.
Hard because I think fans are not, they're aware, or maybe what's happening in media speculation, but the ins and outs, you mentioned family and obviously living there, they don't, the personal reasons on, why you make a decision may not because of a football decision. It may be due to personal reasons, obviously like a family decision. Do you think fans don't, get the insights of that, which may be, quite hard for some fans to understand. Can you talk to me about, your Rangers, your first, your next stint there? Obviously you're getting that big job, for me, not being a Rangers fan, but watching Rangers games, obviously watching the Celtic versus Rangers games, and how big the club is, and everyone that manages there and also plays there talks about the admiration that they have for the supporters and how big the club is, and you don't really know how really the size of the club until you're in there. Can you talk to me about your stint there and about the club, the size of the club?
Yeah, I had great faith in the squad. Obviously, only 5 or 6 players had changed in the year that I'd been away from the time that me and Stephen was there. I'd been a big fan of the club. I actually went to watch when they qualified for the Champions League under Gio Van Bronckhorst, which was a wonderful achievement. I actually watched that game with the Rangers Supporters Club in London. So, very much a fan of the club outside. So when I went back, there was a lot of things that I could count on. The chairman, CEO, sporting director, even beneath me, the academy manager were all in place. People that I knew for 3.5 years in the previous one, and people that really wanted me to come back because they'd seen me work day in, day out and thought I could give something back to the team. And that's how it started. Obviously, we won 18, drew one, lost one of the first 20 games, which is an incredible achievement. And we actually got to the end of the first season, I think, with a 79% win percentage. But I'd lost in the semi-final and final to a good Celtic team. There's a lot of regret around losing those games because in both games we had huge opportunities to score. Very similar opportunity that a young lad, Fashion Sakala, missed in both games, and that's nothing against him because he was excellent for me and he's a top player. But it shows you the fine margins that they're there in management. But around the March April time, there was a change in chairman, which was the vice chairman becoming chairman. So it's not such a big difference. But the CEO, the sporting director, the academy manager, even, and the head of recruitment all left in that period. So all of a sudden, I became under a lot more pressure is not the right word. I had a lot more responsibility than just coaching the team. And we was already going to go for a big transitional period. Big players for the club in that summer were leaving, such as Alan McGregor, Scotty Arfield, Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos were already leaving the club at the end of their contract. So I think 16 left, 9 come in. we actually had a very good pre-season and went into the season with a lot of optimism. We won the Champions League playoff, but then lost to PSV quite heavily, a very good PSV team. And we played 14 games, won eight, drew two, lost four, and we left. But the club wasn't the club that I joined, it's fair to say. But when you get an opportunity to manage Rangers, I don't think in any football club everything's ideal how you want it. You don't always get all the players that you try to sign. Um, and as you say, sometimes the fans don't understand all of this. Doesn't matter what club you're at, whether you're an assistant or manager. Sometimes fans don't understand everything, but they don't need to understand everything. I think fans need to support their club, Edward. I think it's their passion. They're born into it. They need to support their club through thick and thin. They're not always going to understand it, because they're not inside and knowledge. And also if you're really a professional in this game, then you don't take the club's issues to the media. The one thing you do is you protect your club at all times. And I've seen Stephen do that, Gio, and I try to do that myself. We never speak about the issues behind the scenes. It's a wonderful club. I left there, I think, with 72.5% win percentage, which might be first or second in the history of the club. So I felt I deserved a bit more time, but it's life. It's football, and we all move on.
Do you think that's the hardest thing to kind of accept as a coach in your obviously recent stints at Sunderland and also Rangers, that that kind of time thing, every coach wants more time to obviously to implement their style, and obviously bring in the players that they want. Were you surprised about also the timing that they also made the decision to part ways with you?
No, not really, because there were some things that I was not happy with as well. So, those things were communicated. I think the club have only just put a new sporting director in 2 years after Ross Wilson left in April, and Ross has obviously gone and done a very good job at Nottingham Forest. And I think that, as I say, that when I joined Rangers, I knew how the club was going to be run around me as the manager of the team. And it's fair to say, in the time there was a lot of changes. But if I just look at the results of the team, then at the start of the second season, they needed to be better. I think over time that team would have grown and got better because I have a unique insight of watching them train and practice each day, so I know what's coming. And if I look back to the process of starting in any club, it's not easy when you first start. I didn't start at QPR perfectly. Me and Stephen didn't, and Gary didn't start at Rangers perfectly. When you go in, you're implementing ideas. Certainly, when new players, it takes time. I think Sunderland's a different case completely to QPR and Rangers in terms of I went in mid-season there to a club I didn't know with no staff, went on my own, and there was a little bit of discontent, well, more than a little bit in terms of the fans towards the ownership and towards me as going in as a manager. So in terms of that one, there's a real disappointment because there wasn't an alignment that maybe we all thought there was going in.
I think it's hard. Do you think how big do fans play in a club's decision to maybe part ways with a coach to influence the obviously culture around the club, with them, if there was more kind of positivity around the fan base at that time towards you, towards the club, and towards obviously the direction that the club was going in. It was a hard time with obviously Tony leaving, and the fans obviously adored him. He leaves, and the next guy is always trying to catch up to that guy. So, did you find that aspect hard? Much harder than you maybe interpreted at that time.
Yeah, because listen, the results were up and down. Like in the league, we'd won four, drew two, lost five, which is for a championship team where we'd spent most of the time in the top five. Even when I was there, I think I came in 3 points outside the playoffs and I left it there. So look, one thing is, it's a passionate club, Sunderland. The fans want to do well. They live for their football club. They lost a manager they really liked, and there was always going to be a transition period with a new coach coming in. In one thing, it showed me that the fans there can be so strong in terms of their for support for someone. So I actually liked the fact they were so strong about Tony. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out with myself. I wish him well. It's a fantastic young group of players with a young owner. He's got an idea the way he wants to do it. After I left, it went really bad till the end of the season. But this year they've been very, very good. and I know they're in the playoffs right now. I wish them every success. It would be great to see them go up. And as I say, like my last two home games as manager of Sunderland were both 3-1 wins against Plymouth and Stoke, and the fans in those games I thought were excellent towards me and the team. So listen, in every club there's the honeymoon period, there's the period where you maybe do well, and there's the period where it's not so nice. The order in which they go in is not always how you might like it as a coach, but you're probably going to go through those three things in any club.
You just want to divert away from obviously the personal career and talk to you a bit more about the importance of a coach having a sporting director. We talked about that also before, and how important it is for you, but not just you. Normal coach. The kind of modern day of a club's structure is that it's sporting directors there. Can you talk to me a bit about why it's so important, the impact that it has on also recruitment, on also that kind of level, and the influence that that has over the whole club, the say that they have.
Yeah, I think, look, a sporting director, I think is really, really important in terms of the bigger vision of the club and continuity and succession planning. My experience of working for Les Ferdinand and then Ross Wilson between QPR and Rangers, they're two completely different types of sporting directors, but both were fantastic for me in terms of being a contact between me and the board. Both guys allowed me to do what I'm very good at, which is to coach the team and coach a group of players. And they kept the pressures of any club politics or any financial stuff away from me. They also dealt with agents and dealt with the recruitment side of it. I always had a say in terms of which players might come and go and which areas we wanted to strengthen. That's always important. But those are the guys that were dealing with that, which enabled me and my management team to manage the 30 or 35 players that we had, to liaise with the academy and do the bits that we're good at, because that's why we were hired for the job. So I think that's really, really important. Both guys were super positive in their outlooks. Every day when you come into the club, they're there at breakfast or they're there at lunch. Occasionally, certainly more so in Les's case, always watching training, where Ross was always managing the club. There's so many facets in a football club now that you're just the head coach or manager of the first team, but you have the women's team, you have the full academy with the B team, A teams all the way down. You have all the different departments, that you have to deal with, and so I think a sporting director is really, really important. Certainly for someone like myself that sees themselves as a young manager and a field coach, and it's something that's only been in the UK for maybe 10 or 15 years, but I don't think any young managers should be scared of it, because I think these guys are really there to keep you on task. And there might be some days, Edward, where I come in and the end of session game wasn't so good, or maybe one player didn't train well, and I'd be moaning about that. And then I would see the sporting directors and Les and Ross, and they would talk about positively about the direction we're going in. And that's what I mean. Your focus as a coach is on every single minute with those players, where the sporting director's got more of a global look. And I think it's a very, very important position for the club.
Yeah, for sure. Now we're going to move on to some quick course fire questions to end off. Some are from me, and then a few are from fans. One of the questions from me as like an aspiring coach is, what are your three non-negotiable behaviors that you also carry with
You
your
have to
team?
have huge energy. You have to be positive. You have to have huge energy, and you need to be creative. And what I mean by that is you need to give the boundaries for the players. It's they play the game, so the
Mm.
players play. You give them a roadmap, so you have to give them an element of freedom where they can be creative and bring their personality to the team. And one of my big, big non-negotiables is that every day, whatever time we're training, whether it be 10:30 or 11, everything else stops. It's the most important part of the day. I like to have people out there watching. I don't like people hiding in their offices when the training's on. That's the most important part of the day. And I think that you're on this journey in life of a you versus yourself. And so I like people that are hugely ambitious, have got personality, are willing to say where they want to go. And then I think you can work with that. So the positivity thing is massive, the energy thing's massive, and obviously there's got to be a lot of responsibility then that the ownership that people take, in terms of their own careers and their own energy they bring into the building every day.
This may be a hard one, but what one word that you would also describe yourself as a coach?
I would say demanding.
I think when you speak to coaches, they all come up with intensity. It's always about the energy. You mentioned that a lot of times now. I think that's so interesting because I've talked to Neil Banfield and also Mark Morse Warburton. I think in their three words, they've always said that word. I think they always have.
I think that's the thing. Nature of the beast is that you play every 3 days, and this game can cut you at your knees when at the exact time when you feel that you're at the top of the stars or the top of the mountain. So you have to be demanding of people. Your job as a leader, as a coach, as a manager is to get the best out of people. And so sometimes you've got to have some awkward conversations, but it's always about helping the person to get better. There's no coach that wants a player to get worse, that's for sure. And so that probably demanding is the right word.
What is also the best atmosphere that you've experienced?
Oh wow. So I've been very fortunate. I've been involved in 19 uh, old firm games, Rangers v Celtic. So I've seen that. The home and away games when there's been no or very little fans have always been fantastic. But the games at Hampden when there's a 50-50 split in a semi-final or final are very special. I've also been fortunate enough to manage Sunderland versus Newcastle, although it wasn't personally a great day because we lost. The atmosphere in that game was incredible. And then I've been fortunate enough to be involved in games overseas in Europe, and I have to remember one game, Legia Warsaw away for Rangers. It was a 0-0 draw. We won the home leg. Alfredo Morelos scored to put us in the Europa League in our second season at Rangers. But the away leg, the fans were out early with a tifo behind the goal, and wow, we couldn't even hear each other warm up. And the only other time I've never been able to hear each other talking in the warm up, even though you're next to each other and shouting, was away at Palmeiras with Santos. So that was a special one. So there's a few,
Yeah.
uh, there's a few for sure.
Also the last one, who is the most, what's been the hardest opponent to kind of tactically kind of also study in terms of a coach or perspective?
Oh, that's a really good question. Look, you always look for the defeats in that. You always look for defeats in that because obviously it hasn't worked out for you. And we played with Aston Villa when I was assistant to Stephen and when I've been a coach myself. We played a lot with a 4-3-2-1, like a Christmas tree formation, where we overload the middle and our fullbacks give the width. And what it enables us to do is to overload the opponent's centre backs. And we had been together maybe 215 games at the time. We played Man City at Villa Park, and I've got the game on tape. Man City beat us 2-1, although a young player, Carney Chukwuemeka, missed a great chance for us to make it 2-2. It was a really good game. But they didn't play with any strikers. They played like four, two in midfield, and then two on one side and two on the other. And they kept switching the play, which, if you looked at our shape, was something lots of teams had done, but we're very good at sliding and defending the sides. And it wasn't something I was expecting from Man City because it wasn't something they'd done in the other games, but it probably shows why Guardiola is of the level that he is. And so yeah, tactically that was the game which I come away with thinking, wow, okay, he's tried something there in terms of something we didn't expect them to do. We couldn't have seen it in any analysis because he hadn't done it before.
Mm.
And obviously those players that they have in that team are really, really special.
Well done, Michael. That is the perfect way to end. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant, Edward. Thank you, mate.
Thank you so much.